Hi,
Hello.
I'm Esme, and the reason I'm here today is hopefully to get a little bit more of an understanding of you and your family, and a little bit about your little boy. And for me, where I'm coming from is I'm a sufferer of quite a few chronic conditions, and it has left me thinking about disability and conditions that are invisible, in particular things like epilepsy, diabetes. A lot of that stuff just goes under the radar, and so I'd like to sort of be able to bring it to the forefront a little bit more. I know you're Gillian. Could you give me a little bit more?
I'm Gillian. I'm Cameron's mum. He has epilepsy because of a mutation called GRIN2A,
Okay.
which is quite a rare mutation. I also have 4 other children.
Okay. And how old's Cameron at the moment? He's 10 at the moment. And when was he first diagnosed? When was the first kind of conversation from a doctor's point of view about him?
He had his first seizure 3 months before his 6th birthday.
Okay.
So he was 5 3/4.
And would you say at that point, was there anything telling, nightmares, or, him going into a DWAM, now I'm Scottish, a little dreamlike state?
The only thing looking back was he was slightly late in talking, but not really late, like before he was 2.
What did your friends group say? What did people say? Your family? How did everyone kind of cope with it?
I think, to be perfectly honest, most people ignored it.
Right.
Because they never saw Cameron's big seizures, because they were always at night, and because there was very little telltale signs of his seizures during the day, Cameron was just Cameron to them. I would say it's more now that they see the effects of the seizures over time that it's had on his brain.
When he was 6, he was starting school and he was learning to read and write compared to now.
Up until, I would say, the end of primary 3, completely a normal child, above average. He's had all the tests done, neuropsychology tests to show that he was above average and everything. And then I think for a while he was playing against the seizures, trying to keep going. And then it just all caught up on him. And now he's probably declined so much that he's probably back to primary 2 level.
Is it about memory and retention of memory?
The brain cannot learn while he's seizing to that
extent.
ability, that extent, yeah.
So if he was being taught something today and he had the seizures throughout the time he was being taught it, could you ask him to recall it tomorrow anymore?
If he heard a song on the radio, he would start singing along. So it's just, it seems to be certain things and whether he wants to know it.
Okay. Selective memory loss. Would you say that like his character and his stubbornness has kind of carried on his ability to stay with his peers for a while? Like you said, like it didn't decline straight away. He was fighting against it. What do you mean by that? Like, was he pretending? Was he covering up?
Yes, did very much so. Primary 4, he started coming away from his peers because he couldn't keep. His epilepsy makes it very difficult for him to process at any given speed. So conversations are slower. His processing speed's a lot slower, so he started to not be able to do the same conversations that communicate to and fro without being prompted and kind of brought back in. So he, end of primary 4, he started. So that, how old is that? 8?
Yeah.
He started,
like 2 years in.
Yeah. He started coming away from his peers, and in football, he started not wanting to do certain drills that were too complicated.
When it comes to like making friends and having friends at school and things, like, is he able to have a conversation? Would he walk into a room and like make himself known and talk?
He was always very kind of forthcoming and would be probably the louder one in the room.
Yeah.
But up until 6 months ago, he would have gone into the room and made friends with NMDA. Now he went through a phase where he barely said a thing. And they think there's some kind of psychiatric element to his mutation. But now he, instead of having conversation, will just say things that he's heard before.
So like
called
echolalia,
echolalia.
it's a repeating or sort of muttering of a phrase, a well-known phrase, or just a phrase that you've heard talked about in a sentence. Quite often you might associate echolalia with people with autism. Does it
Yeah, if
depend?
you said to him, what do you want for tea? He would say an omelette and say badgers, and they would do so he'd probably answer the question but then say something random.
Okay.
So then it puts people that don't know very well off, and they go okay and walk away or don't know how to answer it. So then it
Okay.
becomes awkward for him, and then it generally stops.
Okay. And when it comes to like make it like conversing with his siblings, would you say they all just take Cameron for who he is, and there's a relationship where he can converse and like open up to them, or is there a barrier there?
Depends on the sibling. But generally they ignore the echolalia and just work with what is there.
Okay. Okay.
I think Steve and I are fairly upbeat. You have to make the best of what you've got. And at the moment, Cameron's physical abilities are probably his strongest point. So we're working on that to keep him physically able, and that when the seizures wane as they're meant to do around kind of 12, 13-ish, then that's the time to work on his education. So we're kind of working on that and just trying to keep life as fun as possible.
I think that's what it's about when it comes to disability. Every single condition and person's experience of that condition is just so different. Do you know what I mean? Like you have an epilepsy and your child have an epilepsy are worlds apart. And when you say Grin 2A, I know that's a mutation, like you say. Can you give us almost just a little explanation of what does Grin 2A mean, or how do you even know that that's what he has? Because it's obviously quite a rare thing.
He had a genetic test done because they couldn't figure out why his epilepsy kept changing, and he kept getting worse, and he didn't fit in any specific bracket. So they decided to do a gene panel, and that's how they know that's what he's got. But it's a very rare epilepsy. It's because the gene testing is quite new. People only in certain brackets are getting tested.
Right. Okay.
So
maybe there's lots of people with Grin 2A
older than Cameron that have never been tested that probably have it. But when he had it, we were still talking in hundreds.
Obviously, you know, in terms of epilepsy, you're unfortunately well versed in what it is. There's loads of people who don't really understand what epilepsy is, apart from the instant thing you think is epilepsy is having a seizure. I've worked in special needs for many years, and so I've seen loads of different types of seizures. And over the years, they've named them and categorized them. But with Cameron, for you, could you tell us like a little bit of understanding of how and what happens with him when his seizure happens, or maybe does he have a pre-seizure thing? Can you tell when he's going to have it? Give us a bit of detail.
During the night, he has the grand mal, the full, how everyone else imagines seizures, the full out seizures is what the ones he has during sleep.
And that's jerking physical bodily movements.
Just how a seizure. But then he also at night went in for maybe 2 years into something called ESIS at night, which was his brain was constantly seizuring, and then every now and then went into whole brain seizure, which then caused him to go into having a grand mal seizure. But his whole brain was constantly seizuring every time he went to sleep for a couple of years. But he's not an ESIS anymore. And his brain is he's not really his nighttime seizure is actually okay at the moment. Epileptic activity, but not too bad. But he also has lots of focal seizures during the day. Hundreds.
Tell me what they are.
They are just all we see is when he's not on medication, you see his right arm shake, and kind of would go like that. But when
he's on head bob, would you describe it as like a head bob?
Medication, all you get is eye blinking.
Okay, so is it like it turns it down slightly or lessens?
Yeah, it's not turning it off completely, but it turns it down slightly.
And how many a day did you say he's having? Hundreds. Okay.
Like
And would you
maybe
say that
400 a
affects
day.
for, so I'm going to say, would you say, but I presume that affects all aspects of life
Yes.
for
But then
him.
for you to see, unless you were looking, it wouldn't actually be that visible.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Unless you were really, you know, concentrating on looking at
Watching.
Yeah.
Watching. Yeah. And what about like when he's having these micro seizures or focal episodes, is he able to converse with you at points and, you know, he starts a conversation and then he goes into one and comes out of it? Or does he remember the first part of the conversation? How does day-to-day life go when he's having all these multiple seizures?
He seemed to be able to carry on okay. While they've had him on EEG and said to him, while they see it just away starting on the EEG, they say, Cameron, 246. And then they say to him, once it stops, it only lasts maybe 10 seconds, they'll say to him, what did I say? And he'll say, 246. So it's just
Incredible.
there is interruption, but
Yeah.
he can work through it.
And when you say there's interruption and he can work through it, is there interruption in his physical being? Does he have drop seizures? Does his physicality change? No, he always stands upright having them. Okay.
He didn't when he was on not on the correct medication.
Talking about medication, what was your journey when it came to being medicated? How did you feel about the doctors and the way it happened? Like, did you basically just put your child in their hands and just say, what do we need to do? Or did you have an idea?
No, they gave us kind of maybe 2 or 3 drugs and said, this is the benefits, this are the negatives. You know, we had a bit of choice in it. They started him on a drug called Epilum, sodium valproate.
Yeah, it's quite a famous one, I think.
Yes, it's just kind of your paracetamol for epilepsy. It treats all kind of thing. It's you use it for most things. They started him on that and with a combination of clonazepam.
Right.
That's quite good for when the kids are in ESIS and things, but they're trying to wean him off it just now. He's on a much smaller dose than he was before. He's also on a drug called ethosuximide for his kind of daytime seizures, which works quite well. He is also on a drug called Soltian, which they get from Germany, which he kept kind of seizuring every now and then at night, and that seems to stop that completely.
And when you say you get it from Germany,
the NHS get it from Germany, not
I was going to pause there and just wait for the moment for you to tell me how you get that drug, Gillian. So the NHS, is it a case of, I understand for my illness, there's been issue with registering drugs, also for children with needs for drugs, and the way that children's sort of legislation in drug companies, it's quite difficult. So I presume you're trying to get around it by the NHS get it provided by a different company. Is that right?
It was used in epilepsy here, and then they found it wasn't that useful, and that other drugs were better. But only in a very small proportion of people, it seemed to stop nighttime seizures. So when we moved to Tunbridge Wells from Scotland, the consultant automatically went, well, that drug won't be doing anything, so we'll stop it.
From a Cameron perspective, like how does it feel for him, do you think? And how does it feel for you looking at him going through this? Like, I can see that you're a strong character, and I can see that you are exceedingly good at coping, but like, what went through your mind? When
Cameron had his first seizure, I found him nearly dead, which was, I don't think I'll ever get over that. He was, all I heard from my bedroom was somebody gasping for air. And I'm quite a light sleeper, and I ran through to his room and found him completely blue, lying on his bedroom floor. So that was our first experience of a seizure. And I had no idea he'd had a seizure. Picked him up, ran him through to the bathroom. Steve called an ambulance. And by the time the ambulance got there, he'd kind of come round, but they said, looking at his pupils, they suspected he'd had a seizure. Didn't take him into hospital, and then we decided we were going to sleep in his room just in case. Mm-hmm. And within a couple of nights, within 6 weeks, he'd had, I think, 10 seizures or something like that. So it kicked off.
And they were in the night, grand mal.
Yeah, lasted from 2 to 8 minutes. So not little seizures.
Even just talking about it right now, I kind of feel a bit queasy. Firstly, I'm sorry for bringing you right back there to that feeling, but how did you and Steve and the kids, like, how did they cope as siblings? Like, what did you go into, like, just autopilot, or what did you do?
Well, everyone who says it always says, how do you cope with that? But then within a couple of seizures, it becomes normal. You know how it starts, you know how it ends.
Okay.
You know, it is normal.
It's a pattern. It's a pattern that you get used to, maybe, I don't know.
So you don't panic about it so much, but also with Cameron, because it was always at night, mm-hmm. and because he always had the seizure and then went straight back to sleep, occasionally he would thrash around after, but generally he would just go straight back into sleep. He didn't know anything about it. It was 75% and happened 45 minutes after he went to sleep.
And is that maybe the chunk where your sleep pattern's about to change as well?
Yes,
is it not?
You go into kind of deep sleep.
To the deep sleep pattern. Yeah. Okay. And did they ever understand why that was, or is that just a pattern that you found?
Normal.
That's perfectly normal.
Occasionally they would happen kind of 5:30 in the morning, just as you were coming out of deep sleep. Right. But most of them happened. So we kind of knew that that's when they were going to kick off.
What's he classed as now, and what's the future?
He's not controlled at all at the moment.
No, right.
He's still having lots of seizures. He's not controlled in any way, shape, or form at the moment. But it's better than he would be off the medication.
Yeah.
But at the moment, they're trying to get a combination of drugs, side effects, control, a combination of seizure control, so that all the effects of the drugs are having sedation effects and other effects where they're trying to make sure that they're not worse than the actual seizures.
It's almost like trying to balance out how bad the medication makes him feel and behave, and how bad the seizures are in his life and how much it affects his brain. Yeah. I feel like you're just so positive and you just get on with it, and you've got 5 children, and yourself and your husband have relocated to Tunbridge Wells for support for Cameron, for the medication, but also you mentioned about the school. And a lot of stuff that we've spoken about online recently as a disabled person has been about lockdown and how it's affected us. You've kind of turned this incredibly difficult situation in this pandemic, as well as having a child with epilepsy and having these challenging times. Can you tell me what the challenge is, why you're doing it, and what it's for? Because it's pretty incredible, I think.
Well, Cameron, kind of over the winter, he was a very active child, always have been. They've always said that they don't know how he can do what he does. Because
the doctors don't.
Yes, they don't understand how he can have the balance and things that he does have. He seems to be able to do anything that he could learn up until he was 6. He seems to be able to do absolutely fine.
Give an example.
Like he can ski, he can ride a bike, anything that he'd learned up until then, he's absolutely fine. Anything kind of slightly more refined skills, learning how to play cricket or tennis or anything a bit more you probably wouldn't do before you start in school, he really struggles with. But he, over the winter, and probably being not a normal school, but not a mainstream school, a lot of the children there have maybe more physically disabled disabilities, but not so much in his class, but he probably does less exercise there than he would have done. And we had a particularly wet winter here, so we probably didn't spend as much time outside as we probably would have done. Mm-hmm. So I was noticing him shuffling more and being less physically fit.
Right, okay.
So
you guys as a family, are you guys as a family quite active.
Yes.
So thanks so much, Gillian. Thanks so much for being so honest and open. And I hope your focus, which is Cameron and your other children, to make sure every day is happy and joyful. I hope that continues, because that sounds like the best thing to do. It was really lovely to meet you. Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Bye.